Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. My name is Daniel Rogers, and I'm here to give you just a quick update, as well as make a few excuses for you this week. So today is Tuesday, November the 12th, and typically on Tuesday morning, we have a Golden Agers class here at the North Broad Street Church of Christ in Albertville, Alabama. And we were supposed to be doing Daniel chapter 7 today, just a couple more verses of exegesis in that chapter, and a little bit further explanation in who is the Son of Man, when does he come on the clouds, and things like that. But a lot of my Golden Agers had appointments or were sick or out of town today, so we weren't able to have class, which means there will be no Friday recording of the class to post on YouTube like I usually do on Fridays around 3 p.m. The other thing is I'm going to the Blue Point Bible Church on Thursday of this week. I'm going to be going from Thursday to Saturday evening, at which I'll be delivering one lecture and hosting one sort of small group class setting sort of discussion on advancing the faith. The idea of advancing the faith is not advancing a system of faith, but spreading the one faith of Ephesians 4, that is a faith or belief or trust in Jesus Christ as the Son of God. I'm going to be talking about that which is perfect and some other things from John 17 and 1 John chapter 4. So I'm sure you'll get to be able to listen to that in the future. I'll try to post a link to that on my blogs and whatnot so you can access it. But I thought it'd be a good idea today to talk to you about what I've been reading here recently and just a few things that you might be interested in so you can kind of see where my thoughts have been. The first is, I don't know how this shows up on your screen, but maybe you can get the idea. The Cost of Discipleship by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Now, I haven't been reading this particular copy, but I wanted to show you that because there is no cover on this. You can see the Cost of Discipleship on the side, and this is definitely an older model here, but that's a book I'm reading now. It's a sort of a fight against this idea of cheap grace, this sort of Sunday morning only Christian who sits in the pew and has no relationship with Christ outside of what songs they may happen to sing on Sunday morning. They don't pray, they don't read scripture, they don't spend time with other Christians, they don't spend time in service to God, whatever it is, he's kind of fighting against that idea, and he's showing the costliness of becoming a disciple of Christ. In other words, what Jesus said, take up your cross and follow me. Or as Paul said, I'm crucified with Christ. That doesn't describe just sort of this happy-go-lucky process, but it describes a life of sacrificial love, of giving up something, of crucifying the world to yourself. And so the book's really good, though. He goes through this Sermon on the Mount, and I don't always, and this is true with any author, I suppose, but the introduction was great, but the meat of the book itself wasn't as good as I thought it would be from what other people said. Don't get me wrong, there was some good stuff in there, but it wasn't as good as I thought it would be, if that makes sense. I guess the expectations of it were so high. Still a fantastic book. I think people should read it, but there you go. Another book I've read, I'm going to put these two together, is a book by William Barclay called Spiritual Autobiography. If you pick up this book thinking you're going to get a play-by-play of William Barclay's life, you're looking at the wrong book. But what you will get are maybe 5 or 6 sections in here on things that he thinks are important, sort of his situation growing up, a self-portrait of himself, some of his peculiarities, some things that he believes, the sort of work that he had done over the course of his life, and then lastly, a testament of faith. If you're interested at all in William Barclay's life and work, I think this is good reading. That one particular section, he talks about, he basically talks about preaching, the role of preaching and what preaching should be and what it shouldn't be and different things. Did a really good job. If you have to give sermons at all, getting this book just for that section on a day's work would be worth it, where he describes the work of a minister and the role of a preacher. He talks about topical sermons versus expository sermons and several things in that. The reason I wanted to read that book is because I recently read this book, The Apostles' Creed. This is a not too big of a book, right? It's not as big as some of these others that I've showed you. But it's about 320 pages on the Apostles' Creed, and he goes through it line by line. And the reason why I wrote this is because there were parts of the Apostles' Creed that he himself had a little trouble with, such as, what does it mean for Christ to descend into hell? What is that about? Or what is exactly the resurrection of the body? Or what does the second coming of Christ mean? And he goes through a lot of that in this book. I thought he did a pretty good job. And if I don't come from a creedal background, but if you come from a creedal background and you have experienced similar unrest with the creeds, then this book might be a good one to pick up, The Apostles' Creed. Another book I've been reading recently is called Lamb of the Free by Andrew Remington Riera. I think that's how you say it, if the L is like a double L in Spanish. Regardless. Anyways, he is a assistant professor of biblical studies and theology at the King's University in Edmonton, Alberta, in Canada. And this book analyzes the various uses of sacrificial imagery in the New Testament in regards to Jesus' death. If you aren't familiar with the sacrificial imagery in the New Testament, this is surveying passages like John chapter 1, where John the Baptist says, "Behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." Or Hebrews chapter 9 and 10, that is an extended comparison between some of the feast days and the sacrifices made on those feast days and the sacrifice of Jesus. Or even the Lord's Supper comments in Matthew 26:28. This is the blood of the new covenant, which is shed for many for their remission of sins. This is a good book because he goes into very, very in-depth into the inner workings and the logic behind the sacrificial system in the book of Leviticus. It's very in-depth. A lot of it is a little bit hard to follow if you're not up to speed on the debates that surround these different sacrifices. But so I think it's worth to pick up. Ultimately, though, it is a critique of the logic behind some arguments for penal substitutionary atonement theory. So if you're familiar with different theories of atonement and the debates surrounding those, then one of the ideas is that the death of the animal in these sacrifices was in place of in place of the one who brought the sacrifice to offer it. So the lamb dies in place of the person who brings the lamb. The oxen dies in place of the person who brings the oxen. And he challenges the logic behind that by evaluating the sacrifices in the book of Leviticus. I will say that when you read parts of it, you can definitely tell he has sort of a lot of, we might say, a lot of passion for the subject. But I think it's a worthy book to read if you're interested at all in digging deeper into the logic of sacrifice in the book of Leviticus. Right off the bat, he does speak out against one of my favorite scholars, René Girard. I've got like 4 or 5 of his books right here behind me on the shelf. But even though he did that, I still appreciate a lot of the work that he did in Lamb of the Free. I am a little over 60% of the way done with the book. The last book I'm reading right now is called Devotions by Mary Oliver. She is a poet, and it's a lot of short form poetry, sometimes just half a page, sometimes longer. But it is a collection of her poems of all time. And there's a lot. It's basically poets put out books of poetry, and this is a collection of some of her favorite poems, or of someone's favorite poems, from all of the publications she did over the years. I like to throw in something like this into my reading just because it mixes things up a little bit. It's good to take a break on, and quite frankly, I enjoy it. Let me share one here with you, actually, I think that you might like. I'm just going to go ahead and read the one on the very first page. This might resonate with you. It might not. That's okay. This is called I Wake Close to the Morning. Why do people keep asking to see God's identity papers when the darkness opening into morning is more than enough? Certainly any God might turn away in disgust. Think of Sheba approaching the kingdom of Solomon. Do you think she had to ask, is this the place? I love that. The idea, of course, is when you look at God's creation, that's enough. That's enough to say that there's a God. But anyways, I thought you might like that. I like to throw in some poetry every now and then. I've read a little bit of a lot of Wendell Berry, Mary Oliver. I'm working into some Robert Frost, and then this isn't poetry per se, but I've enjoyed also reading the existentialists, Ralph Waldo Emerson, for example. Anyways, that's about it. So that's what I'm reading here lately. That's what I've been up to. I don't know if I'm going to publish an article on John tomorrow, which is Wednesday. I've started working on one, but they require a lot of research and a lot of time writing, and a lot of my time has been taken away because of Veterans Day yesterday, as well as just some other things we've had going on, doctor's appointments and stuff like that. I'm going to try to get one out because I've published one over the past 12 weeks, but if I don't, you'll know why. Anyways, that's about it. Thank you so much for joining me on this video today. Hopefully what I've been reading interests you. Maybe you can pick up one of these books, or maybe you can suggest a next read for me. I've got a long list of books that I still have to read. But anyways, I'll talk to you later. Thanks for joining me. God bless.